They took me somewhere to a little room with no cameras. Then they all got on my face, and then they just put me to the ground, and I had that elbow on my back, all in my side, my ribs, and yeah, there was really nothing I could do. But overall though, I'm gonna say it made me a stronger person, if it makes sense.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, I would say it made me stronger because it helped me, like, take in pain and help me tolerate it. Because now I have a high tolerance pain.
Lakeside Academy in Kalamazoo, Michigan was supposed to be a therapeutic environment. State agencies sent foster kids and juvenile offenders there to receive treatment for behavioral problems and trauma. But former Lakeside residents said staff frequently resorted to physical restraints. And some used rough, off-camera tactics to keep order or punish small infractions. In a statement, Lakeside's management company, Sequel, said that its policy is to only use restraints as an emergency safety intervention.
It don't feel comfortable at all. It makes you feel weak and like you're helpless for real. Like, incidents happen. And for it to happen to Cornelius, like that easy. It's crazy. Like this, I watched the whole video on how it happened. They could de-escalated the whole situation.
Cornelius Fredrick died after 12 minutes in an on-the-ground position called a supine restraint. 7 adults participated, one holding his upper torso, another his midsection, and others pinning his arms and legs to the ground. An autopsy found he was asphyxiated.
They told me in my training the kids say anything to get up out of the restraint. I can't breathe. Mama, help me, help me. And which happened to me in multiple occasions that I was involved in a restraint, which a kid told me he couldn't breathe. I'm like, oh, this restraint is right by the book, the way that they taught me.
Was that in the book, or was that kind of the...
No, that was verbal.
They told us.
No, that was straight from the horse's mouth.
And that's crazy because that's my first training when they told me that.
Lakeside staff were taught by in-house trainers at Sequel, the company that managed the facility. Those trainers were certified in safe crisis management, one of many programs that private companies market to youth facilities.
The first restraint that they tell us to go into would be, so I would want to go behind her. And when I'm behind her, I will wrap up this arm and wrap up this arm and swim. But then she's going to fight. You want to put your knee in her and get her off of balance. When you're locked in,
And the only time that you will really use this is like
supine.
If the supine, the supine extension is if they're just not cooperating. Like,
yeah. So normally what happens is we just take the kids to the ground. Honestly, you just pretty much somebody grab their legs. So
Yeah, it's gonna be easy as hell.
so they're fighting. I can't hold on. I can't hold on. Grab the legs. Boom.
Oh, shit.
Boom. Easier and more effective.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I guess there was a moment where I was kind of like in the air when you were pulling me back, but I landed softly. But I can imagine if I were struggling, I might not land as easily.
If we're doing that, you're struggling and you're not landing easily. Around here.
The techniques often require multiple adults to participate and can be difficult to carry out by the book. Still, staff told us that in the constantly understaffed dorms, they were often the only option.
You seem like you got agitated just now. Is that how doing a restraint really was?
Yes, I would say a restraint is very, very, very stressful and it exerts a lot of energy. Restricting somebody's movement is not fun. It's not fun. And that's why I always say that if I could de-escalate a situation, I would much rather de-escalate. But sometimes you can't de-escalate a situation if you don't have staff to divide and conquer. I can't personally see a situation where you will have to restrain a kid if you had the right amount of staffing.
And our open line of communication allows for us to navigate better, but when you're understaffed, it's hard to do that.
And what's very important is not all staff are good staff too. You might be understaffed with 3 bad staff with you too, and now it's a terrible, terrible day. And a big problem too, because Sequel, they just hired anybody. As long as you didn't have a felony, it was good to work with Sequel, and it didn't matter. Because the turnover rate was so high, and they didn't care who hired as long as they hired somebody.
Do you think that there's always a risk to restraints?
Yes, which is why we don't like doing them.
But I didn't think that the risk
Will be that.
was death until it happened.
Restrictive physical holds are widely used on children in residential facilities like Lakeside and in criminal justice, psychiatric care, special education, and regular schools. In 2009, a Government Accountability Office report found hundreds of cases of alleged abuse and death related to the use of restraint and seclusion on school children. And by searching through press clippings and government reports, we've identified 20 children who've died in connection with restraints since 2001. After Cornelius died, Michigan said it would end restraints in licensed child caring institutions, but other proposed bans haven't passed. Some schools, teachers, and parents stopped an Illinois ban on holds that could restrict breathing in 2019. Over 100 letters against the bill were submitted to the Board of Education. 11 commenters said these restraints are the only safe way to contain the extreme physicality of certain children's emotions. Other child advocates say restraints are unacceptably risky and are being used without sufficient regulation or oversight.
My kids have grown up here. You know, my son has always told me that we can't move away from his beach. He's down here every day collecting things. So he likes to collect sea glass and catches crabs and oysters and all that. And, you know, I think when he was, kind of recovering from a lot of the trauma, this has been something that really connects with him.
Guy Stevens' son Cooper has autism, ADHD, and anxiety. After Cooper was restrained at a school in Maryland, Stevens founded the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint.
The staff was afraid he was going to run off. He was physically restrained. That restraint that happened to him was very traumatic. He was cowered in the corner. He had thrown things, ripped things, knocked things over. He was so distraught by what had happened to him.
Who gets restrained the most often?
It's children with disabilities and Black and brown children. You know, aside from kids with disabilities, it's kids with trauma backgrounds. Kids that are in the foster care system disproportionately have a very high rate of being traumatized. You know, I think that we are in a society that very often is very, very law and order focused. It's all about consequences and discipline. I think one of the big challenges is that, you know, we live in a kind of an authoritarian mindset sometimes where it's like, oh, well, I am the one that's in charge. There are amazing teachers across the nation doing amazing work. But there are also a lot of people that I believe have this very authoritarian approach to what they do. It's all about compliance. You know, looking at the school to prison pipeline, this is what is getting, you know, so many kids with disabilities, Black and brown, on that pathway where they're ending up incarcerated.
Are restraints legal?
And we have no federal law, but if you look at the federal guidance, restraint is recommended only for crisis situations that involve imminent serious harm. That really boils down to life or death kinds of situations. That's not how it's used in practice. That's not what we saw with what happened to Cornelius. That's not what we see over and over again across the country.
The Office for Civil Rights is supposed to collect data on how many restraints actually happen in schools, but it's been slow to publish numbers. And last year, the Government Accountability Office wrote a scathing letter saying inadequate data about restraints raised questions about a more pervasive pattern of underreporting in U.S. public schools.
Why is the data incomplete?
Well, one of the things that they found was that a lot of large school districts were reporting zeros. Fairfax County, Virginia was one. They were reporting zeros. It seems to be a matter of non-compliance, but then followed with there's no, I hate to use the word consequence here, but there's no consequence for it.
We were overusing restraint. We had high direct care staff turnover. Our staff injuries were extremely high, to the point that we actually lost our workers' comp insurance at one point. We got a new CEO. He came here with a totally different mindset and really pushed us to do something different.
Kim Sanders and her colleagues at Grafton, a network of special education schools in Virginia, invented UCARU, a crisis management program that sells itself as an alternative to restraints. Care facilities in 36 states have invested in UCARU training for their staff and patented soft pads used to block outbursts.
You're always backing up.
Why is that?
Because we want it to be defensive. We don't want to appear to be offensive at all. What you want to make sure is that you keep your feet one in front of the other, sort of wide, and then you want to when you take a step back, you're going to take a step and sort of slide.
Okay.
I would hit harder. We want you to hear that sound and get used to that, but also know that you can, look, you just blocked it.
Okay, yeah, it's scary.
Back up, give space.
Back up, give space, got it.
Yeah, and that's really hard for people because a lot of people see that as the kids got the better of me.
Sure.
But in a crisis, we're not worried about any of that. We just want people to be safe. If restraint worked to stop behavior, then you would restrain someone one time. And then you'd never have to restrain them again. Well, then why would it be in 2003 we did over 6,600 restraints at this facility? Like that, to me, the logic just doesn't work.
Were there times where you felt yourself turning to restraint even though you knew it might not be effective out of fear?
Of course. We didn't know, then what else are we gonna do? When you get in that moment and someone is physically trying to bite you in the face or hurt another child, you get overtaken by fear.
How did your mentality change?
Well, honestly, especially when we invented Ukeru, you can keep yourself safe. I think that's sort of like the magic of it in a sense, is that when I can use something soft to block when my words aren't working, because if I feel safe, again, my amygdala stays calm. I can be kind, compassionate, nurturing, heck, I would even say loving, no matter how aggressive you're being. Over time, it's really hard for a person to stay upset or target someone who's being nice to them.
Did you get any resistance of people saying this won't work because what happens when comforting someone fails?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think when your words, your trauma-informed approaches, like all of that is not working, then you can block.
Before Cornelius died, Lakeside staff participated in a new Ukeru training. In CCTV footage from the incident, someone picks up a new Ukeru pad, then drops it. Cornelius was already restrained. Lakeside is now closed. Michigan suspended its license. Sequel told us in a statement that it's accelerating a move towards restraint-free care, including Ukeru, across its 52 other facilities.
It's bigger. It's completely bigger than Lakeside. You have kids coming to Lakeside just telling us about their experiences at different residential facilities. And you were just like dang, because unfortunately, I can't tell you it's gonna be any different system-wise.
We're not rehabilitating these kids. This is just rehabilitation in name.
You're not meeting them where they at. When I think of rehabilitation, I just picture space to be able to go out and be upset. Humanizing them has always worked better than controlling.
Man, big time.
If it's a restorative program, if it's a rehabilitation center, I don't see the need for restraints, period.